What is it, son?
My friends.
Well, you see, that's the mortal in you, Peter.
Yes.
We are beyond such things.
Yes.
Now.
But my mother. You said you loved my mother.
And that I did. My river lily, who knew all the words to every song that came over the radio. I returned to Earth to see her 3 times, and I knew if I returned a 4th, I'd never leave. The expansion, reason for my very existence would be over, so I did what I had to do. But it broke my heart to put that tumor in her head.
Do you expect me to talk?
Hello and welcome to episode 137 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I'm your host Becca, and as always I am joined by my lovely co-hosts Dave Bond and Chris Byrne, who are half human, half celestial beings. How are you both doing?
Good evening, folks.
I'm trying to figure out which half of me is celestial.
I don't think it's the half with my arsehole in it, because there's nothing heavenly about that.
It's the upper half.
The upper half, yeah. It's the half with the breasts, yeah.
Of course, it would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
This week, I'm very excited. We are reviewing Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which has the most amazing soundtrack. So I'm looking forward to getting to it.
Better than the first one?
Ooh. On a similar
I prefer it
level.
myself, but that's my opinion. But
Anything that's got a bit of a Beatles tinge to it is all good. So the movie stars Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Dave Bautista, Karen Gillan, Vin Diesel, Pom Clementif, sorry if I mispronounced your name, Bradley Cooper, Sylvester Stallone, Kurt Russell, and Seth Green as Howard the Duck. The music by Tyler Bates, directed by and written by James Gunn, released 2017.
so Guardians 2. Dave, do you want to kick us off with this one?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely coming to the opinion with the Guardians that my first viewing with any of their content seems to be my first. And that's not really to say anything against it, but I had a really good time with this at the cinema. Probably held it in quite a similar esteem to the first one. That's sort of still the case. I think it deepens the original. I think it adds something to that original experience, with all the Yondu stuff and Peter's background, which on paper I was less keen about hearing before I went in. I think it's a more consistent film than the first one, certainly, if I had to say something really nice about it. Act 3 of Guardians of the Galaxy I really didn't enjoy. All that sort of firing up at the sky bollocks I talked about at the time. Absolute poster boy for my sort of third act issues in life, which I've always overstated, because decent action films draw me in no problem at all. But Guardians of the Galaxy stopped telling a story after an hour and a quarter or whatever it was, and just did all that shit for half an hour. Great film though it is. This film I don't think is anywhere near as iconic. I think 20 years from now people will remember the Mary Poppins quote, and that's probably about it. It is more consistent, and it earns its emotions. It earns that sort of third act stuff. Baby Groot stuff's all really great. I think the hint at a broadening of the universe is great. Just sort of cameos from Sly Stallone, Michelle Yeoh, Ving Rhames, and probably others I haven't spotted or I've forgotten about.
Miley Cyrus.
Miley Cyrus. I didn't spot that one.
Well, no, you don't. She's like the talking head voice.
Yeah,
that's an uncredited one. So that's
Also
an early
Rob
fun
Zombie.
fact.
Although I have to say the Gold Lady does give off a bit of a fucking Paris Hilton here. But,
She does look a little bit like
but that said, I came out very positive about it. Thought it's a similar standard to the first one. At a headline level, on first viewing, I thought the soundtrack was a little bit more self-conscious in some respects, and it just wasn't as fresh as often happens with sequels unless you do something wildly different. But I didn't think about it thereafter. I've barely watched the film since it was released. I'm never drawn to watch the film, and when I watched it tonight, I enjoyed it. Wonderful to see Batista given a sort of slightly expanded role, and it works because again, that's a joke that could be done to death. Just that character generally, but it works really, really well. Always pleased to see Kurt Russell, and again, it works. He's just a perfect choice and a good idea. With the lack of an Infinity Stone, that means the film stands alone very well, but it also probably means it doesn't tie into anything with great importance. And I think I'll sort of pick up more on what I think of it and where I want to go with discussion of it as I go along, because I watched it at the time, I've watched it tonight, I'm very positive, don't love it, and I don't know why. And I'll just leave it there for a minute.
All right. Chris.
All right. I'll go. Becca, do you want to go first? Ladies first?
You can go.
Okay, well, so we did Doctor Strange before, and before that it was Civil War, and I kind of stated Civil War's my favourite. Go like right now, and for me, it's at the moment it's a bit of a toss up between this and that. What Dave said is absolutely right. I think what he said, it's a little bit more understated. It's a bit more smaller film. It's a bit more of a personal story really than say like the other Marvel films, because there's high stakes, but it feels very small, if you know what I mean. I think what, as Dave said, what sells this film to me is it earns the emotional ending, and not many of the Marvel films have done that. And I think I've seen it about 3 times now, and for me, I think it's almost like perfect. Bar maybe it drags more in the middle. It is over 2 hours. Maybe need tighten up, though I never really feel it drag. But yeah, I think what really impresses me is just how well thought out the characters are. Everyone is given something to do. Everyone, nothing feels forced. I think when me and Dave did the summer review, I one of my praises was just how it didn't feel like anything was contrived or forced for the story. Everything felt like the natural decisions of what the characters would make, and that's one of the things I was just generally just like impressed by. And right up to the very end, it all just clicks. Everything makes sense. Everything feels earned, and I really appreciate it. So yeah, going in, I would say Civil War is probably the one I admire. This probably is the one I as more of a personal favourite. So that's me going in. Becca.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I think, considering I know nothing about Guardian series, sadly I never read the comics. Going in, I think towards the later stages of phase 2 and 3, I know very little about the content, but in terms of the comics, I've sadly never read them. But these 2 films, volumes 1 and 2, are for me some of the most enjoyable in the series, up there with the original Avengers movie. These 2 films I've had such a great time with, really enjoyed, despite the fact I know nothing about the characters. And for me, at the end of this film in particular, it was a real surprise to see like alternate versions. And obviously now we've got Michelle Yeoh back in with Star Trek Discovery, but to see her on screen as well, I was just like, yes, considering she's such an icon.
Yeah. And as a fun fact, she had as much chemistry with Pierce Brosnan in this film as she did in Tomorrow Never Dies.
As she did here. Yes. Dear oh dear, bless her. She tried, but
no fault.
She kicked ass, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
But no, I had a really good time with this one. Really great in terms of like the score as well, in terms of also the awesome mix, volume 2. I'm sort of loving the vibe given off by the music. Yeah, totally agree with Chris, definitely. I think the only problem I have is slightly kind of pacing around the middle, and the kind of twist that isn't really a twist. But yeah.
Was all that twist that you see coming completely?
Yeah, it's one of those twists that isn't really a twist, and you can kind of they telegraph it a long time ago.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. Like, I didn't see it coming, but I must have. In hindsight, it's blatantly obvious. But
Yeah, it's one of those ones you can kind of think, oh yeah, of course.
But I'll be honest, I just wasn't even like trying. I think if I remember right, I don't think I even tried to guess anything. I just sort of went oh, new Guardians film. Look forward to see that.
Yeah,
Sat down,
you
watched
go along
it.
with it, don't you?
I didn't sort of like contemplate or like try and figure out what was going to happen beforehand. I just sort of like just let it wash over me at first viewing. So that's probably why it was like, oh, okay, he's going to be the.
Oh yeah. But yeah, I don't think it just kind of niggled me. It was obviously watching this on home release, but it's just because I don't have the technology. It's obviously it was sort of 3D, and then watch it again in standard HD, I guess.
Yeah, but it's not 3D. No, there's
well,
a Marvel
exactly.
film
That's what kind
shot in 3D.
That's what kind of annoys me a little bit. I'm like, "Ugh." But at the same time, it's fine.
I don't get what your point is. This wasn't shot in 3D. You're not losing anything by not watching it.
No, that's it. But it's just kind of having seen it, and then obviously, you know, when they're trying hard to convert, you know, sort of to 3D and 2D, if that makes sense.
To get you out of spending more money.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing. Really, it's a little bit just like, oh, it grates on me a little bit. It's like knowing that, you know, but it's a kind of a sort of animated, I suppose. Knowing that it's going to be in sort of post 3D, as it were, and it's just like, oh, and it's kind of there's little moments in this film that kind of pepper with that, and it just takes me out of the film. But otherwise, thoroughly enjoyed it. Give it a solid 4 out of 5. Really enjoyed it. Had a good time with it. Dragged a little bit in the middle, but yeah, no, it was cast all in fine form. It's actually one of the funniest in the series for me as well. Humor's really on fine form. Script's brilliant.
Is that funny? Is that funniest as in relation to the other Guardians film, or funniest in terms of Marvel itself?
I would probably say, I think probably in terms of Marvel, I think, and because some of them it can be pretty heavy-handed. Obviously, the stakes are quite heavy here. There's quite a lot at stake, and obviously as we come towards Endgame, you know, the whole life Earth is at stake. But I think this kind of it really brings you out of it, and it brings a more human to it as well, considering we're out in the galaxy with various races and creatures and things like that. It kind of just brings it a bit more human and makes it a bit more relatable. And as you said, Chris, definitely this is more, even though it's very big, it's also a very small film. It's very personal. It's all about, you know, his father and his backstory of how things came to be, which I think is beautifully shot as well. I think some of I was saying last week about Doctor Strange is probably one of the most visually beautiful films in terms of special effects. Once we get to Ego's planet, which is the name of which I can't remember. I think it's just Ego's planet. It's just utterly beautiful, and it reminds me very much of this is really weird, but you know, there's like they see magic eye things from the 90s. It looks a bit like that.
Oh God, yeah, I remember them.
It's a bit the kind of not.
You saw a unicorn on a unicycle. If you were.
Oh, look at that! It's a pony. Yeah. But no, it's that kind of or something that's, like a Ghibli movie or something that's, you know, aesthetically pleasing. It's a very beautiful world. Obviously, there's a kind of a sneaky underhandedness to it, and there's a dark underbelly which you really don't want to see. But it's just very beautiful, and it's very aesthetically pleasing.
That's what a sequel's meant to do.
Well,
what
exactly,
a sequel
obviously.
does when it does it properly.
It's all that world building. So.
Well, it's the fact that, you know, we talk about this with the Bond series sometimes, that, you know, they rock up to start preparing a new one every, you know, couple of decades. And, you know, the first thing, you know, Craig will say is, the first thing we thought was, how can we top the last one? And just think, well, look at the history of your own series. That leads you to a really silly place. And some of the best films in the series, in fact, most of the best films in the series, I would postulate, are smaller than the film that preceded it. In almost all cases, Majesties in the Bond series is smaller than You Only Live Twice. You know, Your Eyes Only is smaller than Moonraker. Casino Royale is smaller than Die Another Day. And so it goes on. It's when they strip it back and start thinking about character first. And I think the easy thing here would have been just to dream up another adventure. Yeah. But they seem to start from the first principles of where do we want the character to go. I say character singular because it is largely Peter Quill. But they thought about where they wanted it to go first. there is evidence of a bigger budget here. Even the opening set pieces, I'm not even sure they could have done as much of that with the first film. Once they'd sort of sorted out all their backgrounds and general sort of plates. So there's evidence that it's bigger in terms of what they are able to do. And I suppose terraforming worlds is big in technical terms. But the story is actually deceptively a bit smaller. And that is what you are meant to do. And if you can, Godfather 2 style, actually improve the first film with the bits you fill in of character, then you've done a really good job. And I think they've done that here.
Yeah, because it's mainly focused on Peter, but it's also they've really sort of, touched on Gamora and Nebula as well as Rocket and given Michael Rooker. Yeah,
I mean, obviously
he's
the
really good
Yondu
too,
character is completely... But again, I never got any impression that they dreamt this up for this film. The Zack Snyder way of let's throw in a curveball, let's throw in a twist.
Yeah.
This is very much. I could be very, very clear in my mind that that's where James Gunn knew at the outset he would take this in a sequel. When he did the first film. We're not going to talk, I don't think, too much about the whole James Gunn business that has happened, but obviously we started this series, and very early in the series, James Gunn was fired. He is at the time of recording. For those who want some context when they're listening to this down the line, we know at the time of recording that James Gunn is now back for the third film.
Yeah, he's been rehired, hasn't he? So
it's
due to previous tweets that resurfaced.
Some would say he was never really fired, but that's a very sneaky Disney, very, very sneaky.
I think it's very much at the behest of fans, or the behest of the cast and sort of big players within Marvel as well. So he's directed these two films. He basically is Guardians. What are you doing, Disney? Get him back in. So I
think you've got to draw a line between Disney and Marvel as well.
Yeah, true.
From what we can gather, Marvel wanted to keep him.
Yeah.
Disney felt from a PR perspective they should let him go
because they're more kind of family friendly, I must say.
Yeah, but the problem with that though is like, okay, I mean the tweets were a bit dodgy, but at the same time, like they were from what, years ago.
The worst thing about the tweets, in my view, was they weren't funny. That was his only crime there. He was trying to be. He was in his sort of edgy stand-up comedian phase, and he posted out all these tweets he thought were like edgy. And the biggest crime is they're not funny.
You also have to remember, it's like what was it? 10 years ago or something like that, wasn't it? It was maybe just shy.
Even a little bit further. I think they might even be as far back as something like 2000.
So,
but whatever.
Bear in mind, Twitter would be it's a different place back then, so it would have felt a bit more experimental vibe going on as well. Yeah. So context does matter.
Twitter's way more civilized these days.
Oh God, but yes, and but also it's just like from a PR perspective, just wait it out. No one's going to give a shit by the time the film would be out anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, it was a coordinated. Without getting into the politics of. We know it was a coordinated takedown of him. We know who it was coordinated or what groups it was coordinated by. I think a few months for everything to cool off hasn't necessarily been a bad thing. It's probably freed up another slot for Marvel to try something else like the Eternals or something, which they are deep into casting now with rumours sort of swirling around that. And actually, James Gunn's going to end up doing the Suicide Squad for DC as well. So in some respects, everyone has kind of ended up benefiting of it.
Yeah,
so
Warner Brothers
no loss now, but
are turning things around by looks of things because Shazam's meant to be getting decent.
It's getting decent reviews now, isn't it?
Yeah, so everyone's sort of saying sounds
better
good.
Than decent, excellent reviews. Yeah.
So we've got that with Wonder Woman possibly. So if that holds up.
By the time we release this episode, Shazam will have literally just come out. So literally by the time this is sort of dropping in your feeds to download or stream, it's probably the day we saw it, that sort of thing. But yeah. Coming soon on a cohesive DC universe.
Oh dear.
They've got a plan. Probably.
Maybe. Hopefully.
So
they got a plan now.
Yeah. Now they have.
I think all I wanted to point out is just for context that in some respects we haven't needed to talk about much because it's no longer an issue, but in not talking about it much, you almost have to bring it up. So yeah, James Gunn is back at the time of recording. But yeah, there is. It seems fairly clear to me he's got a plan for this, but I find it a harder film to remember the details of. I've seen it today, so I should be fine for this. But it's a film that I find it harder to remember the details of than its sequel. Than its predecessor, than the first one. The first one, I could sit here having not seen it for weeks and like sketch out everything that happens. Here, I'd have to think about it. So there's something not quite there that was in the original, but actually in its beats. I don't think I'm going to rank it higher than the first one. I don't. But actually, from scene to scene, it's arguably stronger in quite a lot of places. But it's, that whole, magical, more or less than the sum of its parts out that happens sometimes.
It's a more thoughtful film.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
It's a little bit less than the sum of its parts, because in 6 weeks' time, I'll remember Kurt Russell, and I'll remember certain sequence, and I'll remember a lot of the things around Drax and Baby Groot, and I'll forget half of it again. It's just one of those films that just doesn't stick, and I do stand by it. I know I've said it once in this show already, but there is something about Guardians where I need new material every time I see them. And that's knocking the material. The material's really, really good, but it's just never the same when I rewatch it. Whereas some of the more traditional sort of heroes of this universe, I can just watch over and over again. So yeah, it's just an interesting thing. We've got a few new Guardians this time. We've got obviously the sort of film ends with Mantis in place. I quite liked as a new character. I really like the whole thing going with Drax.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think just what makes a lot of the Drax stuff work is because they just bounce off each other because of her.
It seems really natural, really organic, doesn't it?
Because they both kind of have this sort of like. She's coming from a place of like almost like naivety, like a simple sort of like
she's been completely sheltered almost, hasn't she? So. Yeah,
but he just has this complete they just like states the obvious, but they just have like this weird kind of two completely different perspectives, like sort of consider her to be hideous and things like that.
Well, she's got inherently terrible self-esteem.
Yeah.
And so hanging around him in the earliest parts of this film is probably not that good for her.
No. Considering he calls her ugly, and it's like, oh.
Yeah.
But don't say that.
Yeah, but they're that like sort of, I know.
That's what makes it funny. That's what
they're that unself-aware that it just kind of just bounces off and it just seems, you know what I mean? So,
exactly.
And that's why it's funny.
Yeah. I'm still not sold overly on the Nebula character. I just can't take to her for some reason. So I would have
too cold.
I sort of think the whole. I mean, if you're going to give characters something to do, develop them, and all the rest of them, the logical thing was to develop the Nebula Gamora relationship. So I think it makes perfect sense, but I can't warm. It had to be here. It's right and proper screenwriting that it is here. But I'm not that interested. But it's a minor point. That's just personal taste. Anything Rooker's brilliant in this. I love, Yondu. Character that annoyed the shit out of me in the first film and was meant to. I guess the other thing we want to say at the outset of this is the timing of it. It's set in 2014. There is one and only one reason for that. Do either of you know what it is?
Go on. Inform me.
Baby Groot.
Oh, yeah.
Sole reason, get Baby Groot into this film.
Well, obviously.
Yeah. Well, so obvious you didn't say when I asked.
Well, this is why I said it ironic. This is why I said it in that kind of voice. Like, obviously,
it was one of those things where I had to I thought there's got to be some other reason. There's got to be.
Yeah. That's what it was. They decided to set it a bit earlier, which also makes a continuity error of the Stan Lee cameo because he's referring to when he was a FedEx man, which is the following year's film. Actually, it's not, is it? It's Civil War 2 years later.
It's a good laugh, though. We could look at that and go,
I mean, it doesn't have to be continuity. It could be like a coincidence, because like, how long is he really... Because I think the Stan Lee cameo, I mean, it's meant to like hint that it's the same guy, but that hint could be a joke in itself. That, it's like, oh, right,
it's only a little throwaway joke. Yeah. It really doesn't matter.
No.
Plus, also, it has big merch implications where everybody now when the film came out, everybody wanted first of all, a dancing Groot at the end of the last film, and now everybody wanted the baby Groot. So extra merch opportunities.
Who are these? Everyone.
People who buy the Funko Pops.
I've never met anyone who wanted either of those things.
Have you ever seen those those articles that pop up where like outrage on Twitter when something on TV and it like catches like three or four people and you're thinking like, really?
Really?
Here are some of the tweets, and it'll be Tony Johnson from Carlisle.
Yeah.
You know?
Angry from Tunbridge Wells, you know.
Yeah, Jack Smith from
people
Kent.
on Twitter were furious at such and such when they said
angry from Amesbury.
Like 4 random people.
Brilliant.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
All 4 points of the it's like, right, okay.
I can't remember the last conversation I ever had with anyone about, like, apart from on this show, about film memorabilia either. I never go to work and everyone says, got to get me a Sean Connery Funko Pop. It just doesn't come up.
They're real Marmite, aren't they? In terms of the Funko Pops as well, like, I know people in my friendship group either love them or hate them. And it's just like, they are like the Marmite of toys because they are everywhere. And it's just one of those things, isn't it? It's like, so I'm never going to have them. And then obviously they brought out Bond ones and I'm like, So...
The thing is, though, they're just collectibles, and people people do like to collect shit.
It's all ephemeral, isn't it? It's all kind of fleeting, so...
Yeah. It's
like plastic and end up in landfill.
It's the same sort of thing as, like, of steelbooks. It's like, there's no reason why you should really sort of buy a more expensive, albeit prettier, version than a regular Blu-ray. But people just do because it's like a collectible. It's like limited edition.
They date badly though, because I used to have a numbered special edition of a Star Trek First Contact VHS.
Oh, that's really special.
Well, I never kept it. It might actually be worth something now, but what would be the point? I'd be moving house every few years and carting that shite around.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. That's true.
I'm not the greatest of collectors anyway. If I was, my gut feeling is I probably wouldn't be collecting Funko Pops.
No,
no. But all I'm saying is this everyone
sticker
wanted.
books.
I've never met anyone who's had a
Yeah, that was kind of meant with a hit of irony. Not everybody, but it's one of those things.
I've got my 1986 Panini sticker album.
Or my Pogs from the 90s.
Yeah.
They're a dear. I've still got those somewhere.
Yeah, go in a school ground at playtime and then be like, got, need.
Yeah, one, got that one, yeah.
If there is any memorabilia created during your forthcoming year as Batman, Becca, then we'd happily collect some of that.
The crime rate will suddenly go up. Well, more so than it is now.
It's shot up under Chris. I got it under control a few years ago, but there you go. All my good work's been undone.
Well, hopefully Brexit might help.
You become Batman in June. I'm not going to probe that comment because it's so inadvertently racist as fuck. But anyway. So yeah, the baby Groot was the main reason for the setting of the film. Don't think that makes any real difference, to be honest. It could have been set any time.
No. I think it makes sense because you got baby Groot, then you got teenage Groot in Avengers, and then presumably in the third
He's
film
quite funny,
he'll be more adult in the third.
Yeah.
Assuming.
Yeah. Vin Diesel can do his own voice, or go back to having his real voice treated to sound like screen Vin Diesel. Yeah, because we have postulated that might be his real voice.
To postulate overview.
I don't know.
Or just don't bother with the CGI. Just get a Vin Diesel and like a bunch of twigs taped on him.
Just insert
stick
Vin
some
Diesel.
bark to his face. Let's go. There you go. Cut him back a bit for this one, folks.
But it's all done by motion capture, wasn't it? So you never know. He might appear in real life.
Just like do Bradley Cooper up like he's in like Teen Wolf, but get him to walk on his knees. That might be the first time I've mentioned Teen Wolf in an episode.
Wow.
Okay, watch out, Michael J. Fox.
We're coming. You.
Yeah. At least we know we've mentioned him before, so.
Yeah.
He survived it that time.
He survived. It's okay. We've done it twice.
But how much longer?
Okay, so apart from that, I don't really remember anything else in the build-up to this. It was, they went away, got started on making a second film, and sure enough, in 2017, it was one of the ones that turned up.
I mean, how well did this do? Do we know what the
Yeah, worldwide gross of shade under 864 million, which I'm just going to check.
Typical Marvel.
Yeah.
Or is it ranked in terms of?
I'm looking to see if that, because my gut feeling was that was around Thor Ragnarok money, and actually it's within 15 million of the same money. Slightly larger budget for this than Thor Ragnarok, but only slightly. Very, very similar in profitability, as far as we know. Because obviously, the caveat with that is always in what markets did they make the money, what was the distribution deal, etc., etc. But broadly speaking, yeah, there's a few of them like that. I'm trying to look. I'm going to just look up Spider-Man: Homecoming, because that's. I think that I've got a feeling that did slightly. Yeah, did similar as well. They're all within about 30 million of each other this year. So obviously, Ant-Man films do a little worse. Avenger films do better. And then with Black Panther and Captain Marvel, you've got a degree of pent-up demand because they are slightly serving underserved demographics, frankly. But yeah, in terms of, again, without getting too political about it, but with in terms of sort of leads with white men, they all did very, very similar this year. So yeah, okay. With that, shall we discuss this film sequentially?
Let's do it.
Go on then. So we open up with a CGI young Kurt Russell.
Of course we do. What state is this? Is it Minnesota? I forget what state it is.
Oh, I don't know. I think so.
Right, okay, but Kurt Russell is basically looking like he did around the time of, The Thing and all the rest of it. Tidied himself up a bit, but
This is quite convincing, isn't it?
I think so. I think this is very convincing. It's only a handful of shots, so it's...
Well, they use somebody else as like a face reference, but for the most part, the sort of de-aging and CG is very convincing, I find.
Oh, I think it's spot on. I think they've largely been excellent anyway. There's very few problems with any of it. Like I say, I've seen one or two where I think that doesn't look exactly like that actor did at that point. The key example for me was, I've said this before, Michelle Pfeiffer. She's meant to look, in Ant-Man and the Wasp, she's meant to look like she did Married to the Mob, and it's not quite.
No, not quite there.
Still looks like a younger her though, so it's fine. But yeah, this looks like Kurt Russell from this era, and he's in love with the woman from The In-Betweeners.
Oh yeah.
And they're singing. I can't remember what the song is.
Oh, it's Brandy by Looking Glass.
Right.
Brandy.
Yeah, the song they reference later on. Yeah, so he sort of like shows like this like weird like plant that he's like seeded and goes like, and then it kind of cuts to the Guardians, and they're fighting a monster trying to protect it from eating a load of batteries.
Yeah, they're fighting a big. Yeah, they're protecting the batteries of this sovereign race.
Yes.
And they have to fight some big fucking, massively oversized worm thing. Yeah,
its teeth have teeth.
Yeah. And the credits go to Baby Groot dancing to, again, Chris, you might have to fill in some of the songs because I keep forgetting what they are.
Oh, it's ELO, Mr. Blue Sky.
Right.
Which
cool.
you'll know from
Sun is shining.
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yes.
Right, okay. Really good, this. Just really good, fun way to sort of introduce us back to them.
Yeah, because you got it basically focuses on dancing Baby Groot. And
for at least 3/4 of the scene, yeah.
Yeah.
We don't really care about the battle. We just care about Groot.
Well, yeah, but
doing what he does best.
It kind of like every sort of like every of the Guardians like has their interaction with him, like and they're all kind of like in a kind of like looking after the child of the family, quote unquote. So all have to like, sort of
I think the point is not only to introduce us to Baby Groot, but also this is a standard day's work for them.
Yeah.
This is just what they do. Even Baby Groot's paying very little attention to them because it's what he sees every day of his life. And it's, very and sort of character work. You can see Gamora and Peter work together pretty well now.
Yeah. There's a bit of a thing where she pulls out a gun. He's like, "You got a gun? I thought your thing was a sword." But okay.
Yeah. Oh, lots and lots of little lines seeded in all the way through this. And I just love the fact that, it's just so typical Drax that is, his end idea is to just fucking jump inside it and go bananas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
Which
and
is
then at
crazy.
the end, he thinks he's won it. And of course, he
No, he's like, I've single-handedly. No, you haven't.
no. And then, of course, they've then got to go. Yeah, there's something a bit Star Wars throw room to this. They go back to sort of meet. Is it Aisha?
Yeah, basically
Yes.
the head of the sovereign race.
The sovereign race who are literally gold. They are golden girls and guys.
Always believe in your soul.
Coming
You
to a
got the
coming to a
power.
teaser trailer for our rankings episode in about 10 weeks.
You've got the power to know you're indestructible. Always believe in yourself.
Yeah,
We're coming into copyright territory here. Let's drop it off.
So they're a race that have basically betrayed Goldfinger. every single one of them has betrayed.
They've all been painted gold by Odd Job.
They have,
Either that or James Bond has shagged all of them really
all of
well.
them, every single one.
Really, really well. Call back to a 4-year-old episode.
They leave a little base of the spine, a little gap at the,
We
to
did
allow the skin to
postulate
breathe.
during our Goldfinger commentary some years ago now that she wasn't painted gold, just sometimes when he's really on song, James Bond shags so well that they slowly start turning
They
gold
just turn
afterwards.
golden, really.
So that is the alternative.
I mean, it
explanation
answers the
to it.
mystery, like why we don't see him again after the film, because obviously they fuck him, they turn gold, and that's it.
Yeah, he just sells them for scrap.
Sells them for scrap. Oh, dear.
Yeah.
That's why he can afford all that nice apartment in London with the coffee machine.
He's got a nice apartment in London. He's got his own DB5. All because he took Halle Berry to cash converters sometime in early 2003.
I mean, really, he's a prolific serial killer. Really, if you think about it, James Bond.
And then, of course, with Halle Berry, because of the way that film finished, when they melted her down, there was a load of fucking diamonds in her arsehole anyway. Yeah, he did well out of that. So, there's just lots of little jokes seeded in, and it feels like a script that's had several passes just to like keep seeding more of that stuff in. So you got Rocket winking with the wrong eye and stuff like that, which is funny. It's quite a basic joke, but I think it's funny.
Yeah, it's quite clever.
Yeah, that's the thing. Nothing really feels like, oh god, here we go again. Like, because it does just go like, oh, they get the wrong guy. Like,
What's the joke about Aisha wanting to fuck Peter or something? There's something like that, isn't it? I forgot what the actual joke is.
I think the joke's more about the fact that he considers it, but then tries to like play cool. Like,
There's the fact that his relationship all kind of like flirting with Gamora as well, and it's like, oh, so he's trying to,
yeah,
deflect, sort of flirting with Aisha.
He's trying to impress, but then he goes, oh, actually no, that makes me sound like a twat.
Yeah, just not trying to play it down, trying to play it cool.
First act of this film is really, really efficient in terms of setting the story up because they head off now and Rocket's stolen a load of the batteries.
Yeah. Oh, they also
Yeah,
have Nebula as well, because that's what they came for. They exchanged because they have they've captured Nebula, so they've come to get her.
Who's James Bond exchanged at cash converters in Derby.
In Cheltenham.
Yeah, they are immediately pursued by the sovereign race. They've made enemies of instantly, and I think Rocket just thought it was a bit of a caper.
It was like one of the
As a plot setup, it's a really silly thing to do, but it's kind of very Rocket too, anyway.
Yeah, because he's always like, there was always the gag that he's got something. He likes just taking stuff. He likes taking people's prosthetic limbs of some sort. So he's always got a collection of stuff. Or things like that. That's why he's like, he always has like a load of eyes for Thor.
To remember the mission, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
just because he
like,
thinks it's funny, as well. He's like, yeah.
But it is really, really efficiently done though, because immediately Yondu is hired to pursue them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's underway very soon. It's not straight away.
We see clash of conflict.
Yeah, and the retro feel of the film that they're chased by the sovereign race, but they're playing it like it's fucking Space Invaders or something.
Yeah, I think they did. Yeah, because their race is so kind of highborn. I guess
it's more like being in a simulator or something. But the actual Foley sounds are very Space Invaders.
Yeah, it brings out the kind of, even though it's futuristic, there's a sort of 80s, 70s, 80s nostalgia attached as well. But yeah, I think because of their high status, they do it all remotely. And they didn't actually send pilots out physically. They kind of all do it by remote control, as it were. But yeah, it just sounds very equal, like kind of the 70s, 80s kind of bent there with the Space Invaders style. I forget the name of the other game that I wanted to mention. That kind of the sound to it, which is quite nice.
Well, I don't know if it's called this over
Tetris,
here,
Asteroids,
but
things like that.
Americans would know it's Gallagher, wouldn't they?
Gallagher, that's the one.
Yeah, but I don't know if it was called that here because I didn't even get that joke in the Avengers. I had to look it up.
What is Gallagher? Also known as
I don't honestly remember it being called that here, but there you go. So where do we go now? They are saved by a guy who looks like he's surfing the back of a spaceship.
well,
and,
they get landing.
Rocket points out he's really small.
Yeah, or far away. You can't tell from that.
Very, very fun head humour there.
Yeah. So they've had a crash because they're fighting over controls of it because they're both trying to like prove themselves, both Rocket and Peter, and they had the guy come in like sort of save from the last of the droids, and they managed to crash land on an island somewhere, and then we get introduced to the guy, and it's Ego.
As an action sequence, this is really kind of kinetic. It's really quite well done. And it actually shows under it all they're really brave. They really fucking throw themselves into this. I mean, both Drax and Gamora take quite a pounding during this sequence, and not in the fun, let's experiment way.
Yeah, Drax really like sort of just throws stuff in there. We also get introduced to like kind of like the bubble astronaut suit.
That will pay off at the very end of the film. The more we're talking through this, even this early in the film, the sharper the writing is sounding in my head.
Yeah. Because everything has a payoff. Everything kind of is...
Everything has a payoff, and when you think how strong Act 3 is, then, yeah, that's a very, very tight film.
I mean, because even something like that bubble suit, it's like you have to establish it, but you could easily just throw it on and people would understand it on the first glimpse. But it's good to introduce it because it does make it tighter. And where were we? So yeah, we get introduced to Ego, and that happens as they're kind of as a rift between the Guardians because they're fighting over like why they crashed and things like that. And they're basically sort of both Peter and Rocket are both being reckless.
It's the one thing I found a bit contrived. That just seems to be a repeating theme that they squabble a bit. So it did that did feel a bit squabbling here.
Yeah,
but no big deal. It's all right. The sequence as a whole plays really, really well.
Yeah, I mean,
I get what you mean. It was one sort of little minor blip on an otherwise.
Well, yeah,
really
it's still made sense to a degree because we haven't had anything. We had anything come, any resolution with them to an extent, really, have we? I mean, we see them come together as a group of people in the last film, but we haven't actually sort of had any sort of personal kind of like, oh, you're right.
We don't know. They haven't been around each other that long to know what their dynamic would be on a standard day, I guess. Yeah. Okay.
So where we up to? Yeah. So we cut to the sexy robot club planet.
Sexy robot club. As Ego told Peter who he is yet, or is that after sexy robot?
That's after. So where we get introduced to Yondu.
First we've got Yondu fucking a toaster or whatever it is.
Yeah.
He did something with the robot.
Yeah, we've got Yondu. Yondu's just like fucked a mournful looking toaster, and we get introduced to Sly even off camera. I mean
he's great. I totally forgot. I remember going to see this, and then I was like, Sly.
It's there. You can see like you hear him before you see him. It's like that's definitely Sly.
One of the few actors in the world that doesn't need to be on screen to have screen presence.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, because you're just like, yeah.
I still need the subtitles though.
Well, you would from what Chris just said then.
Well, yeah. That's that very sort of, and we basically
legendary.
And basically, we get told a reason that he's essentially kicked out of like the club. But basically, there's like a code of honor with it's Ravager, isn't it? They're all Ravagers, yeah.
Yeah.
and
Hence that pays off at the end as well. There's a code of conduct because there's basically a what's the word I'm looking for? There's a protocol for everything. I mean, even funerals that are done a certain way. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's like there's almost like an honor amongst thieves, so we say with this set of group. But basically, that we set up the fact that he did something that was unforgivable, and I don't know, Sly's like only in like a couple of scenes, and I think in the first scene off the bat, he only gets like one job to do, but he still like sells like of someone who's actually generally hurt by someone. It's like it gives me no like you give me no pleasure. This gives me no pleasure to do this, but and it's like everything's like selling really well,
and it is to do with it's all to do with Peter as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which actually, what Yondu did all those years ago, has absolutely alienated him from his community.
Yeah.
And we learn at the end that community only really have each other, so it is all sort of wait to what is coming. So it's really good, but I mean, again, on first viewing, I didn't really know what watching. I thought Sly turns up and then he fucks off again, and it's like, all right,
it's fine, we'll let him off.
Yeah. So meanwhile, you have like sort of whispers of like Taserface whispering, like sort of say, oh, he's weak, he's like, oh, what's he done for us, kind of thing. So you get introduced to that early on, but then you have the Sovereign come down and they sort of basically just offer him a job to take the Guardians, and then we cut back to the planet where they're sitting around the campfire, like talking to Ego.
Sort of, he does reveal who he is.
And he does, doesn't he? I'm trying to remember now.
Yeah, he doesn't flesh out the story until they get home.
Yes.
Or back to planet. But at this stage, he's, I'm your father, and I've been looking for you.
Yeah, he explains that he hired Yondu to basically sort of bring him back, but he kept keeping you for.
And of course, at this stage, Yondu was the guy who made Peter thieve and threatened to eat him.
Yeah.
And basically behaved like, they all behaved like a bunch of hicks that didn't make it feel a particularly welcoming environment. So at this point, that all plays with what we know. But they head off to Ego's own planet.
Yeah.
They leave Rocket and Groot stay to repair the ship. There's a great sort of set piece around Rocket coming up in a little bit.
There was because before that, Gamora does basically convince Peter to actually go with him to go with Ego, because it's like, look, you like the kind of that hint that. There's a line of dialogue which kind of like sort of hints that maybe suggests that possibly in terms of the father relationship with Yondu, or that there's like kind of like, well, he wasn't your father, he was, or Peter says, oh, he's kind of like my father. He's like, oh, there was my only the only father figure I had was Yondu. But he said that in a kind of like, in a kind of like, well, that was
look what I was left with.
Yeah, kind of thing. So on, and this is on the third viewing, I thought, so they're even telegraphing this from on this stage. But anyway, we get on the ship, get introduced to Mattis, who can read people's emotions.
She can read people's emotions if she touches you, and those sort of antenna she's got can be sort of pointed at you to change your mood briefly, because she does induce fear in Gamora very briefly and very subtly later. Leading, I think, while they're on the way to the planet, isn't it? She reads their mind, isn't it? Or is it after they get to the planet? I can't remember. They're in that room. It's in all the trailers. It's really funny.
The thing where basically sort of like she touches Peter and she's sort of like, you have sexual feelings, and then point for her and then points at Gamora, and then Drax just...
You're in love. Yeah, well, I'm a generally loving guy. No, these are romantic sexual feelings for her.
He's like, you released your deepest dark secret.
And then Drax laughs his ass off, which is in all the trailers, and it really plays. It's so funny. Do me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a scene that thing that made me laugh. There's like the scene early one where like where Rocket like sort of like ripping to Peter, saying like, yeah, I'll leave a turd on your pillow, and it'll be Drax's, and Drax just like cracks like, I have humongous turds. just things like that. You know. Yeah, whenever Drax laughs, you always end up laughing for whatever reason. Anyway.
You do, that's true.
Yeah. The thing is, the guy underneath it all's got quite a tragic background, so when he forgets himself and laughs, it's like a pure expression of joy. That's pretty cool.
So Gamora does not want to be touched. We know that, and then
very threatening.
Yes,
yeah, very threatening when she does. Then where do we go? I suppose Ego starts showing them around and all the rest of it. Starts explaining where this planet came from. It's him. The planet is him. The body's just an expression of him. He seemed to start life as a floating brain, effectively, a floating consciousness, which they represent as a brain. And then over years, he has built layer upon layer of it until it became that planet. And then he's formed the sort of body afterwards, and then gone out searching the galaxy for life. He created a human as best he understood it, and used that human to go out and find life. And it's just got examples of him, and then he tells the story with, these. He can actually manipulate matter, so he just creates effectively models of himself, like dating Peter's mother.
Yeah. Which is actually really cool visual.
I like that. Drax asks him if he's got a penis.
So the answer is yeah.
Well, we've all seen Kurt Russell's Thing, haven't we? If you think about it.
Oh, of course.
1982 film.
Quite literally.
Which has dropped on Netflix today, folks. I've just noticed.
Well,
really?
Well, if you've not seen it, go and watch it, because it's probably one of the best horror films that it's made, in my opinion.
Don't bother with the remake. Check in with the original. Even I enjoyed it.
No, don't check in with the original. That's the thing from another.
Well,
world.
no, not the original, but the Kurt Russell film.
The original remake.
The original, yeah.
Not 1982, John.
Not the recent remake, the 1982 film. Obviously, the 50s one. If you're a real horror aficionado, maybe. But yeah, check in the Kurt Russell version, not the modern remake.
And actually, I will say this. The John Carpenter's Thing is. That's how you do a remake.
Well, it is literally. Remakes generally get tarred with the same brush, and the consensus is generally they could be rubbish. But this is one of the best remakes, not just in the horror genre, but ever.
Well, yeah. The ideal version of remake is you take the central premise and you just make do your own thing with it. You sort of take the basic.
Ocean's 11's a cracking example.
Definitely.
Where they took a film that wasn't that good in the first place
and made it amazing.
Took the basic premise and then just did their own thing with it.
Yeah, that's exactly what you do, don't you?
But got a little bit of Rat Pack Cool into it as well.
Yeah, really worked.
The Thing is a very similar principle. It just takes the basic idea and then just does its own thing with it. No pun intended. The 2011 remake is just a remake. It's perfectly serviceable, but
a prequel remake.
Yeah, because at the start of the Thing, they pick up this dog running away from like a Norwegian, I think it is, camp that's like just across the way, and the 2011 film tells the story of that camp. Well, you didn't need it. The things they found in that camp in the 1982 film, you never thought, I wonder how that happened particularly. But secondly, one of the things I've always been a CG defender on this show. Anyone who's listened to it for a long time will realise I just think it's almost lazy nostalgia to talk differently. But if there's one film that really bucks that trend in my mind, it's The Thing. A lot of what makes it great is the invention in the practical effects. And doing a CG version of it might be cleaner, but it's just nowhere near as special. But yeah, The Thing's a great film, and it's just a complete study of complete distrust. It's like Alien mixed with Reservoir Dogs, and set in the ice. It's great.
Yeah,
it is brilliant.
And obviously, when you talk CGI, the practical effects in that are really good, especially.
They are really spot on, aren't they, in terms of the body horror as well?
They feel very stop motion, but they're just so inventive.
It's really groundbreaking as well.
Yeah, so
very innovative
really
for the time.
Cast. So yeah, it's really great. So. In summary, Kurt Russell has a penis.
In summary, go and watch The Thing. You won't regret it.
We've all seen Kurt Russell's Thing. Anyway.
Yes, we have. Well done.
So
it's a good joke. And I love he goes, dude, I don't want to think of my mum and dad like that. He says, My father would often regale my with the tale of how he impregnated my mother.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Well.
Ah, dear.
Anyway, yeah. So
yeah, it becomes clear. Ego is effectively a celestial. He's a god, not the god, but he's a god. Has manipulated matter around that base consciousness. No, it's not quite clear. Is it? He is asked why he left Quill's mother, and I cannot remember for the life of me what the answer to that was. At this point, you know the real answer, but what was? What did he say?
I think the answer is because
I fucked her on board.
No, it's because like he can't spend too long away because he does have to. Because like it's like if he stays too far
the
away,
body starts to break down.
Yeah, the planet kind of starts to dissolve, doesn't it, a little bit, so he has to kind of keep on coming back.
Yeah, it's like the light fades and I'll lose. So it is along those lines. That's the answer he gives at the time. So we're back on the other planet. Endor, and you got the rest of them, Rocket, Groot, and Nebula. They're hanging out in the broken ship, and the Ravengers start sneaking in.
Yeah, start sneaking in to capture them. This is a pretty good set piece.
Yeah.
Rocket's just completely ready for them. He set trap after trap and is surprisingly agile. To cut a long story short, it's multiple examples of them being tasered, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that doesn't do it, it doesn't do it justice. It's a really good scene.
Yeah, you got like sort of gravity kind of thing which sort of like makes them sort of like fly back on the air up and
which
down.
Which is actually a brilliant visual when it cuts to the outside of the forest and all you see is two groups of them being fired to the sky alternately and repeatedly.
So he does that with kind of like at ease, kind of enjoying himself until you get the arrow sort of pointing at his head from Yondu, catching him. Yeah, and
then Nebula basically.
Because that's when because he decides because he says, "Well, fine, we'll just take the batteries then," and then the rest of that turns the mutiny because they thought, no. Every time you always like sort of stick up for Peter, you care about him more. They were
going to take the batteries and sell them for like a quarter. Yeah, they're not over bright either because he can get like $1 million for them.
Yeah.
And he says to sell them for 250,000, and someone goes, "But that's a third."
They're a bit special.
Yeah.
Maybe they have a sculpture.
So all hints that are hiding in plain sight. Yondu is protecting Peter all the way through this. He took the job
he's
in order.
Like a father figure, really, isn't he?
He took the job so the job wouldn't get done. Simple as that. If one of the other Avengers does it, they'll capture Peter. Yondu is already like broken from that group. He's already not trusted, an outsider. Him fucking up another case isn't going to like make anything any worse. And actually, he might as well make a bit of money out of it.
Yeah,
it's really great, actually.
It's good when you think about it.
So as you say, we have the mutiny sort of like happens, and then Nebula kind of like shoots the arrow thing off his head, which kind of
Is it this point Gamora and Nebula find all the sort of remains?
No, that this happens later on. That happens. There's a bit more plotty stuff.
Hang on, haven't we got Quill playing with his dad first?
Yeah, so he kind of like sort of they basically play catch, don't they? Sort of he starts introducing to the powers, so he sort of like introduce him to the idea that he can sort of harvest energy, and and Peter like kind of makes like a little light ball, and they have like a father and son game of catch because obviously he's never done that before.
And the nice thing
never got that far, did they?
Is the little ball he creates is clearly perfect because he's inexperienced. So Kurt Russell takes it and pats it down like it's a snowball.
Yeah.
Just like tidies it up a bit and then throws it back, and they have a game of catch.
That's lovely, isn't it? I just think that's such a nice scene.
Well, yeah, but it's such like a thematic thing because like it's father and son, so it's like obviously the playing the one thing.
They
They've
miss
grown up.
They miss childhood, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Because Peter is technically, he's still kind of like child-minded because he's never technically grown up. Because he's never really had a quote-unquote...
No, isn't it? He's kind of missed out on that side of his childhood, really, hasn't he? So.
Because he's still kind of like in Arrested Development almost, because he was taken from Earth as a kid and hasn't really grown up properly. So there's reference that we get back on the ship, I believe, when we're basically they've just killed half the fucking crew, or basically they've just launched them all out to space. Horrible bastards.
Yeah, this is the whole taser face thing, which Rocket laughs his ass off at, which is funny. Laughing at the idea this guy has called himself Taserface.
That's a funny name.
Yeah, but again, that's a gag that doesn't really get old either. Even when it kind of like reaches penultimate.
You could have Rocket do something like that in the first film. We had the whole "that's a fake laugh" joke in the first film.
Yeah,
and it's the same comedy beat. It's actually done slightly better here, if anything. You could play a version of that in each film, and I don't know that it would get that tired. It would just be a little character tick.
Yeah. But yeah, also I think it also is a bit more to like his personality of like, I don't care, I just like ripping on people. It doesn't matter what position I'm in. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna say what the fuck I want just to get at you.
I think it's also the experience to know that whatever's gonna happen to him is gonna happen to him here.
Yeah.
You know, saying a few like insulting things won't really change that.
So might as well get your money's worth.
Yeah, exactly. Oh well, fuck it. Yeah, kind of like me at the end of relationships. Oh well, I'll fuck this up anyway now.
Oh, Dave.
No, actually, like a real fucking what's the word? Like a little fucking energy ripple went through me then, because that's genuinely happened a couple of times. Like, oh Christ, yeah. Anyway,
you're probably not the only one. I think a lot of people can relate to that to some degree or another. So yeah.
So let's really fuck it up, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have got. So, does he present his plan at this point as well? Doesn't he, Ego? To Peter.
No, because I don't think so. I think there's a bit more of a. I think there's a bit more stuff going on with the mutiny, because you have Rocket and Yondu locked up in a cell, and they're like sort of.
Oh, that's right. Yondu has that kind of, you know, whatever you want to call it, the mohawk bit kind of blown off, which is clearly part of his abilities, particularly with that arrow. So yeah, that's right.
Nebula goes off. He sort of just basically she trays off her ship and then jets off to basically sort of get at Gamora, because that's basically all she wants to do. And where are we up to now? We have a bit more of Drax and Mattis, and they kind of like have a bit of a bonding session, but then Gamora interrupts, because I think Mantis is about to tell Drax something. Drax is sat there again. It's just one of those bits of the film where I was thinking like almost every scene has some decent humour in it. Yeah.
Because Drax is basically telling her how hideous she is. But he doesn't mean any offence. I mean, in the abstract, listening to this, if you've not seen the film, it sounds like Drax is fucking bullying her or something. And he's really not. It's absolutely nothing like that. And in fact, later in the film, he gags. And when she says, "What are you doing?" I'm thinking of being with you physically. You know, he's even having sexual imaginings on that make him uneasy. But she is clearly about to tell him she's unsettled about what she knows what ego is. And she can't quite tell him, and then she's about to. They clearly have a bond, and then Gamora turns up just as she's about to, and there is a hint to the audience there's something being hidden here.
Yeah, it's like she was like trusting Drax, but couldn't trust Gamora for some reason, and then she kind of scared her off to an extent. So yeah, Yondu and Rocket plan to escape, where we have them sort of teasing with Groot. Well, not teasing Groot, but trying to like get Groot to get the other. What's that thing called? Where he puts on his head that detects the arrow.
I don't know what it's called, but they need to go and get one of his other buns.
And he comes back for all sorts, like comes back with a toe.
Yeah, and it's a really old joke in terms of like cinema, but it's funny as well. Where he opens a drawer, sees exactly what he's looking for, reverses back to his face, and you see him pull out like fucking shoe polish or something. It's just I've seen jokes like that. I've seen jokes like that in Only Fools and Horses. You know, Rodney reaching over a fucking gun to pick up some cigarettes or something in a like bank robbery episode and things like that. So yeah, the joke's been done before, but it's done really well.
You have like a toe, and Rocket's like, please tell me you got like a fridge with extra spare digits, and like, nope. Okay, well we'll just pretend that didn't happen. So eventually they manage to get the arrow, and then they basically sort of kill all the mutants and then escape with a rocket. They have like the end gag with Taserface trying to like signal their whereabouts, or like to track it to the Sovereign, and sort of like tell him it was at the hands of Taserface, and they got them kind of snigger at it as well. just so again,
how could James Gunn's tweets be that unfunny when he's this funny? You know what I mean? Anyway, carry on.
He's improved a lot in the intervening years.
Presumably. Anyway, so next we have Gamora and Quill have a fight, essentially, or Gamora tries to warn him, and now Peter's now a bit, well, hang on, I'm kind of liking it here now, and you convinced me to come here, so why you're telling me I should be wary of my dad. So they have like a bit of an upset.
It's a little bit of instant, no pun intended, but it's a little bit of instant ego in him as well. He's just learned he's actually quite powerful.
Yeah.
And suddenly he's kind of a little bit disrespectful to her. It's a bit of a nothing scene, really, but again, it's supposed to seed in the audience the idea that when what we're about to find out is revealed, Quill might just go with him.
Yeah.
Of all the
plus it makes sense. It does make sense as well. That's the other thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have a bit. Then Gamora goes off, and then we have Nebula fly in, and they have that big sisterly fight, which is
two sisters. I'm just watching.
No, lads.
I was just quoting The Office.
I know.
Yeah, just watching. We have like the Brandy scene, which we have a replay of the song Brandy, where Ego sort of talks through, like he comes in and Peter's got the song, and he sort of that's Brandy by the band Looking Glass. It's like, do you know what? It's probably one of the finest songs ever composed, and he kind of relates it to kind of how he is, with the sailor going off, basically trying to entice Peter, sort of explain.
Basically, he is but sailor. Do you say that's going port to port in it? Which is what's coming. Which is what is coming. Basically, it's a wonderful visual of basically a model of Kurt Russell, like making out with every conceivable shape. Yeah.
I like the idea that he didn't actually change his appearance to match theirs. No. Got Kurt Russell, like 80s Kurt Russell, making out with a big with tentacled alien.
Yeah, kind of almost the implication, because I don't know. Yeah, no, because he did pick a shape he thought would suit Peter. So no, he could transform. Yes,
but
so it's funny. It's funny as a visual though.
Yeah,
same coat and everything. Never even changes his clothes.
Yeah, it does look a little bit like this is.
So every planet he goes to has exactly the same climate as well.
It doesn't get too hot or too cold.
It's funny because they go back into these rooms later, and all of those models are like still there. Because originally I thought it was a bit like Man of Steel, where Jor-El is explaining to Kal-El with all this kind of manipulable kind of liquid metal almost, where you form the shapes, it shows you something and then it disappears. But no, everything he's creating to prove it just stays there. He's got a room of all these models of him doing aliens. So yeah, it's got. I keep mentioning it, but it has to be around here. They find the
the bodies.
Yeah,
it is wild. This because like beyond what he kind of like explains to Peter that you are bigger than everyone else. So it's like you do not belong with a standardized life. And they kind of find the bodies and they go, oh, we need to get off this planet.
Yeah, well, those bodies are the offspring from all the other people he's impregnated around the galaxies, or galaxies, whichever. And he would get Yondu to collect them, and then when it turned out they had no celestial abilities whatever, he would have them killed or kill them himself.
Yeah.
And Quill is the only one showing power, and when you watch the film a second time, that's why he celebrates so hard when Quill is able to make that sort of energy bubble. So yeah, he's been looking for this for like decades or longer.
And and he touches him on the forehead that sort of like that almost like hypnotizes him for this kind of energy and power that like kind of when he's he's
telling him the story.
He's telling the fact that he's like, oh, I promise you I'll do that. Like I wouldn't hurt him, and I'll tell you that should never felt a thing. But
that plant he put on Earth at the start, he's been putting them on all the planets, and it will eventually. It's a piece of him.
Yes.
And it will basically consume every word that he will become omnipresent. Really, all these worlds will become him.
Yes.
That's the idea. Why Quill? I don't know why he needs Quill for this.
Because he says it's something for whatever reason. He even says for whatever reason, I need more power. So not just me on my lonesome. I can't do. But
it's not a lazy plot, but that's lazy writing. The for some reason argument.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember if that was actually words he used.
Okay.
But it's done in that Kurt Russell kind of like whatever kind of like I'm just gonna explain it matter of fact
to do that. He's the right one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But then he finds out. He admits it. He says it broke his heart to put that tumor in Meredith's head.
Which kind of what breaks Peter from it. He goes like, what? And then he starts shooting him down. I can't believe...
Yeah, well, it shows his lack of understanding of humanity that I think he thought Peter would be all right with that.
Yeah.
Despite all this, he does have that kind of fundamental lacking. Doesn't he?
I mean, that's his flaw. Like, because he is...
Fatal flaw.
Well, he is a god called Ego, essentially.
Yes, obviously.
So he's very much like...
He could spend hours...
We can't confirm it, but we are imagining he never had a milk round.
But it's that kind of that thing. I mean, we get towards the end, and it's the where he kind of like when he's trying to like sort of plead with Peter not to like destroy this, otherwise you'd have no power. You'd just be human. He'd be like, what's wrong with that?
You'll be just like them.
Yeah, and
he looks heartbroken.
Yeah, but he looks like I can't even comprehend that. And that's the thing. He does not understand because he comes from that sort of I am an ominous god. Why? Well, there's nothing more than me. Nothing else really matters beyond me. I'm ego. So that's basically what it is. It's just it makes sense within his character to be like that. And plus, also, he's kind of in a trance anyway, so he's a bit like because he does casually say, "I've just killed loads of fucking my offspring." But it's when he admits that he put the tumor that like strikes a chord with him, and he snaps out of it, and then.
But he thought it was a bonding moment. Oh, it broke my heart. Like you must understand because you lost her too.
Yeah, in a kind of because she just say like I did generally love her, but I knew if I came back, I won't be able to leave. So
he killed her. He killed her to disengage from her.
Which kind of backs up the point of the fact that he was like so kind of like, hang on, no, that would be like being a human. No, I can't. This can't be. So he destroyed the thing he loved to remain who he is, which is kind of deep. So basically he goes. Peter snaps out of it, says like, "Well, I don't want any part of this shit. You killed my mum, you prick." And he says, "Fine, well, I'll just use you as a battery." And then that's when like the Guardians come in.
We do see around the sort of galaxy as all these planets start to consume. So it feels a bit of an odd non sequitur just because of the palette of the film. But we suddenly see Earth, and it looks odd to see Earth in one of these films. But outside of like an opening sequence in the first one or something. But yeah, they are starting to consume the Earth, and we can see it will kill people. In fact, we do see it kill people.
Yeah, it always does frustrate me though when you see that like happening around all different places, and you sort of like, yeah, hurry up, try and get out of that fucking thing because people are dying now.
Yeah.
But so
it's always important to see them. I've talked so many times about the abstract millions killed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know we only see a handful, but it's helpful.
Yeah, and it's happening on numbers of planets, so we keep cutting back and forward. It's and it's growing fast, but not like on a huge rate. You know what I mean? It's like, give it.
It's fast enough if you're close to it, but it would take a while to consume the whole Earth.
Yeah.
At the same time, Mantis does tell Drax everything.
Yes, this is when they crash in with because they found the bodies, and basically they go to get Peter. So they crash in. They use I think they use the spaceship, don't they, to crash into the room, don't they? And
they do. They crash into, because when he forms, he becomes David Hasselhoff briefly.
Yeah.
I tried to be a form that would be pleasing to you, and it's the Hoff.
Yeah.
Because that's another running joke in the film. He made up stories when he was younger about him being his dad.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Gamora remembers those. She's obviously told Gamora those stories, and Gamora misremembers them.
Yeah.
So
didn't he have like a magic boat or something?
It wasn't a boat; it was a magic car.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
A magic car.
So yeah, he's basically told her the story of Knight Rider, which I'm not sure was running when he. Oh no, he left Earth in the late '80s, didn't he? Yes, he would have seen Knight Rider.
So, yeah, it's kind of thing like you did like the Tale of Flashdance, like one of the greatest era.
But yeah,
Kevin Bacon.
Yeah. That's the story of Flashdance.
Yeah.
Which is a gag that even goes into Avengers in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, there is with him and Spidey. What is it still the greatest movie ever made or something? It's like it never was. Which actually means, but that the implication there is Parker's already matured beyond Peter Quill.
I think it's kind of a bit but in a way that he comes from a time where he's younger, so he comes from a thing where it's not that well revered. Whereas like when
I appreciate that, but obviously had Quill stayed on Earth and lived a normal life, he probably would have outgrown Flashdance as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And we're kind of in Act 3 now. The whole point seems to be they need to destroy that brain. At the same time, they are under attack from the Sovereign.
Yeah.
Rocket's made a bomb that Groot needs to set off. That was in all the trailers as well, or little teasers where baby Groot misunderstands what he has to press. So you wonder if he's going to set the bomb off by fucking accident when they're all stood right beside it or something. Mantis's role is to try to keep
Ego asleep.
Keep him asleep, or at least set him off to sleep at some point. Who else? What else? I don't know what else their roles are. Quill will directly fight Ego because at the moment they have the same powers, and I think the rest of them just need to escape effectively. And Yondu's there as well. Yeah.
And in terms of last acts go, you mentioned like the shooting up in the sky. This kind of works, but it still is like an emotional, personal element. It's still telling the story. You're still getting characters interact and having certain character moments. I don't know how you feel about this.
They have character moments, and I would say, and I'd like to hear Becca's point of view, but I would say personally, on first viewing, it worked terrifically because it payoff of everything we've seen.
Yeah,
they all had something to do, It was unique in terms of its visual and what they're trying to do, because they're effectively inside Ego.
Yeah.
They're without meaning to sound crude at all, they're inside the guy, if you like, in his planetary form.
Yeah, they're kind of inside his mind, I guess, aren't they, I suppose?
Ego's, Peter is about to be an orphan if this works. Do you know what I mean? So there's an element of that. A man-child, a guy who's never grown up, now has to kill slay his father. The Groot stuff
it has
is
profound psychological implication.
It's all great. The only thing I would say is on second or third or whatever it is viewing today, it plays too long. Act 3
that would be kind of like my only problem with this film. This scene, I mean, it's done really, really well. It's set up brilliantly, but it does begin to sag a little bit, and that would probably be like my main gripe, my main complaint, really, definitely.
I don't have that critique of the film as a whole, but I certainly think Act 3 is just a
the scene is just a little bit baggy, but apart from that, I have no other major problems with it.
But it knocks. I don't think it's necessarily better than the first film. It doesn't have the freshness. It's not as memorable. All of those things I said at the top of the show, but Guardians of the Galaxy is like 2/3 of an outstanding film, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is a complete, very good film. So Act 3 lands, it's just too long.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair
enough. It
enough.
had too long.
The fact that it lands works, though. You know what I mean?
It still pulls it off.
So few of these films do. Particularly as it does descend into wall-to-wall action for the last, part of the film. I mean, comparing it to, I know we haven't released it yet to listeners or anything, but obviously we've already recorded Captain Marvel, and actually, although that had a very action-heavy third act, as most of these do, it seeded action all the way through it and sort of interjected into that action a lot more. This is actually wall-to-wall action most of the way through, so it traditionally I'd switch off to this, and I thought it did a good job.
Yeah, I think reason why this works more because it feels very much more personal, and you're invested with the characters as they're off doing their thing. You're very
and of course, as he's fighting his father, it was twee, but it's true. As he's fighting his father, he realizes his dad's actually stood right next to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's like, as Yondu said, who's your father, but he's not your dad, for example.
I think there's almost like a beauty when you when you hit it all in one moment. It's not sort of done in parts. Like it's that realization of a character who's like, oh my god.
Yeah, but they talk about it. He says, "But you were going to eat me." Well, I was being funny, And it was like, no, I was supposed to bring you to him, and I didn't because I saw what he was doing. He says something to him like, "If I hadn't been such a skinny runt or so little or whatever," and he said, "That ain't why I kept you." Yeah. And I think that's lovely, and it was funny. It's not as funny on rewatch, but there was a big laugh first time. I'm Mary Poppins, you're.
But it's not. It's the fact that he says
you look like Mary Poppins. He said, "Is he cool?" He said, "Oh yeah, Mary Poppins, y'all."
That was it. Yeah. So they fight off the rest of the sovereign drones, and then Ego wakes up and he basically just overpowers everyone. So Peter has to find it in himself to fight away from it, and then.
And so it's Big Stone Man versus Pac-Man.
Yes,
that got a big laugh on cinema release as well.
Yeah, because he did say I'm going to make some weird shit. I'm going to make a Pac-Man, and he ends up doing it.
Yes, he said that earlier when he was first, because they can create anything really.
Yeah.
And so at the same time, you've just got the trying to set the bomb off in Baby Groot and all the rest of it, which they do. Quill really should be killed in all of this, but Yondu is still around, and Yondu basically puts the suit that was seeded earlier on him, the sort of bubble suit, and takes him up into space, where basically he dies because Peter has got the only sort of protection from the lack of elements up there. So Yondu sacrifices himself for his boy.
Yeah, said so he's he may have been your father, but he wasn't your daddy.
That's it. Yeah, it was your father, but he wasn't your dad.
We get the big funeral.
And again we have a throwback to a bit of Knight Rider. Bit of a personal thing, because you haven't mentioned the connection with Rocket really, where him and Rocket and Yondu have a connection because they kind of come from similar backgrounds.
They come from abuse.
Yeah.
Actually, in the first film, that's hinted at because we see Rocket without any top on, and he's clearly scarred up. And he's been experimented on. There's some kind of implants or something in him. People who know the Guardians better would know this, but I'm talking about what's presented in the film and against that, what I can remember. Yeah. So he humanizes himself to more than just Peter.
Yeah. Because they both come like from World of Pain, and he used that kind of like flippancy, almost like disconnect. So they piss everyone off because that they're used to it, or that they kind of like it's almost in a way to kind of like push everyone else away so they don't get hurt, which is kind of and that's kind of like explains like where everyone's was really at. Like what explains why Yondu was like that, because he was just it's just like they're not owning up to their actual feelings. They can't so you have this real emotional connection. So which is another thing I didn't pick up on first time when Rocket says I don't want to lose one, only want to lose one friend. He's still thinking, well, Peter's still going to remain on the planet. I didn't think he was talking about Yondu. But anyway. So, yeah, we have the funeral, and Rocket sends it's Rocket sends the word out, doesn't it?
For anyone with the right Netflix level subscription, and I mean the 4-screen HDR version, 4K. The 4K on the funeral is lovely.
It is.
I watched it on Netflix today, and the 4K on the funeral is just lovely. It's bursting with colour. It's really nice, and it's got, obviously it's made up, obviously, because these races don't exist. They come from the minds of people at Marvel, but it had a real feel of ritual to it, established almost ancient ritual.
Yeah,
they've been doing this for their fallen for decades or centuries or whatever.
Well, that's pretty much what it's all based on, isn't it? Really, it's quite interesting.
They're kind of like space fireworks, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I love the fact it kind of it reconciles like disparate ravagers as well, because you end up with like Sly and Ving, who's ridiculously oversized in this. They put him against people. They've upsized him, so he's still.
They made him look bigger.
He's twice the height. And Michelle Yeoh and that they get put together. I really want to watch the sort of Dad's Army fucking Guardians film.
That'd be funny.
Well, yeah, but they were the original Guardians of the Galaxy lineup, so there's hints.
It was relaunched in 2008, but obviously the original incarnation I think is 1984. So I think that's where that comes from, and that's the level. That's the total extent of my expertise.
Yeah. Just
little bits and pieces I've read, not very much. Never read the actual comics.
So there's hints they might sort of turn up in the third film, or maybe have like the own spin-off. Maybe I think probably more like just turn up in the third.
Maybe
film,
the problem is Marvel has a packed slate. I mean, if there was a second Marvel studio with if Fox or Sony had the exact same sensibility as Marvel, and this had been sort of created as an X-Men type universe, then they'd have had room to like make more of these.
Yeah, you can do kind of a smaller, lower budget one, can't you? Almost like a Space Expendables, can't you?
Whether they'll do like another imprint or something, I don't know. Just outside of the MC, I don't know. There are possibilities for it, obviously, but I know there was a gap because of the whole James Gunn thing. But the next Guardians film is probably will arrive 5 years after the second one. And in that background, we're trying to launch the Eternals, do Spider-Man films, do Captain Marvel and Black Panther sequels, launch whatever the team-ups are going to be after the sort of current incarnation of the Avengers, and all the rest of it, and potentially other new characters they might want to launch. I mean, Adam Warlock is hinted at in this. Will Adam Warlock turn up somewhere? At the light of all that, you're going to find it very hard to fit in a Sly Stallone film. Sly's in his 70s now anyway. You know what I mean? You can't keep saying, well, we'll do it in 5 years' time. But it was a nice little tease. I liked it. I like the idea there's a bigger universe out there of people doing similar things in different configurations. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
And all done to the sound of Cat Stevens.
Yeah.
Cat Stevens.
Or
yeah.
Giannis, is he now called that, Jan?
I think he still performs as Cat Stevens, though. Okay. All right. It's a bit like Terence Trent D'Arby is not called that anymore. He's called, like, Sananda Maitreya or something.
The artist...
This just in.
The
Prince
artist...
is now called the artist formerly known as Prince.
I mean, I don't give a shit, to be honest with you. Call yourself whatever you want, and if you feel better with a different name, do it. But, like, I do struggle to, like, remember and keep up who's who sometimes.
The artist formerly known as Cat Stevens.
Yes.
The artist formerly known as Yusuf Islam. Oh.
I mean, at least with Prince, we know it was just to get out of a recording contract.
Even though, you know, in the end, he became literally just the symbol. He still called him Prince, and that's fine.
Yeah, but he became that symbol to get out of a recording contract.
Yeah,
that's all it was. As soon as all that expired, he went back to being Prince again.
Yeah, because he had the rights to his name, basically.
Yes, I agree. He changed his name that way just to get himself out of the recording contract.
Yeah. Strange one, but there you go. Cat Steve, there's a few other. I think I might have used Flashlight on the teaser here. It's a good soundtrack. I struggle to remember it as well, but then I haven't seen the films often. I've seen Guardians of the Galaxy like a couple of times as many, if you like, but neither of them have I seen as many times as I've seen, Iron Man or whatever.
Yeah, I think I've been listening to the soundtrack a bit recently, and I listened to both of them on like back to back, and I think I definitely prefer the second one. It just sounds a bit more kind of, I think much more like the film. It just feels a bit more complete, whereas like the Guardian sounds very much like a compilation of stuff. Like it's like a compilation of random part hits put together, but this one kind of has a bit more thought behind it. You know what I mean? There's a bit more. I don't know. I think it is more quality rather than crowd pleasers. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Of course. What does he get at the end? He gets a Zune or something that's got 100 tracks on it.
Yeah.
And he's blown away by that.
100?
Yeah. There was a time that was like impressive. The idea
that was a lot, yeah, back in the day.
You could physically fit in your pocket, could be fitted, in terms of. Yeah, it was good.
I didn't get much memory on those things, unfortunately.
Yeah. I need to actually go through the soundtrack, to be honest with you, because it's funny because the chain played in a perfect place as well.
Yeah,
that was a good song.
Breaking the chain, and he's got to kill his own father.
Yeah, he's got to literally break the chain.
Perfect. Yeah, as I say, the last sort of minutes of the chain, it's the Formula One theme, when it was on BBC. But yeah, the Fleetwood Mac song. I'll have to go through it because I, to be honest, I didn't immediately recognise quite a lot of it anyway, but I used Flashlight Parliament on the trailer. I'm sure I did. Yeah. So post credit, so we go into the credits, and all I want to say is this is probably my favourite credit sequence since Iron Man 3.
Wow.
What? Because it just kept giving you stuff to like watch, and not just like
forward.
We get 5 of them, don't we?
Just forward momentum, good-looking credits, good music. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Iron Man 3, I've always enjoyed the credit sequence to it because it's got a retro feel and a whacking ton of energy in it. With this, there are. What are the post-credit sequences? The post-credit sequences. I think
you had the introduction to the Sly's Space Expendables.
So you had the old Guardians. That sounds so rude. I don't mean it to, but the older team,
the previous incarnation,
the classic team.
Yeah, the
classic team. Yes,
that's a good way to do it. Classic team.
Yes. The first one is what's his name?
Got James Gunn's brother.
Yes, messing around with the arrow.
Yeah, he gets given the arrow. Rocket it back together to him, which is a nice thing to do, and it's a nice little character beat for Rocket, given he's not in the scene.
Yeah.
He took the time to put that back together for him, and he's trying to learn to manipulate it with his whistle. He ends up firing it at Drax round a corner, and he kind of stands there looking sheepish while Drax is screaming with pain.
And then so you have that. Then you have the introduction with the Sovereign looking a bit broken, and then they've got like a gold coffin with that. I wish I'll call him Adam.
It's actually quite the opposite of a coffin. It's an incubator, if you like.
Sorry, yes. I don't know why I say coffin, but a chamber of some sort.
Call him Warlock. That I don't know the wider universe well enough. I had to be the person I was sat next to grew up with Marvel. He said that's Adam Warlock, and then obviously I came and looked the character up and stuff.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what that was.
No, that was quite a big reveal, wasn't it? Quite a big deal.
Groot's now a teenager, so obviously
Groot.
that's cutting forward a bit. So basically, a father going into his room in Peter. So Peter's maturing into a father figure. He'll regress a bit by the time of Infinity War, but yeah, he's Groot is. There's a few wanking metaphors here, you know what I mean, and stuff. But yeah, he's a moody, mouthy teenager calling his dad. And the last one I think is Stan Lee being left by the Watchers, who he was telling all the stories. And it's how am I going to get my ride home?
And
that's
it. We had another at the Duck cameo.
Yep.
Well, actually, in the credits, you see Jeff Goldblum's character from Thor Ragnarok, who is the Collector's brother.
Isn't he just dancing or something like that?
Yeah, you just see a little inset of him. You see Hasselhoff singing. What's the character called? I've got to remind myself. Let me think. Hang on, I'm trying not to look. The Grandmaster. That was it. I did have to look. Jeff Goldblum's Grandmaster character, who we'll see. Chronologically, it was later the same year, so we hadn't seen the character at this point. So it's just something seeded in here, but he is from the same, universe because he's the brother of the Collector, I believe. Yeah, we definitely saw Hasselhoff, and then there's lots of the team dancing, and it's got kind of it's got a faded magazine effect.
There's 80 stickers, haven't you? And they got sort of as they come on, they got scribble sort of moustaches and glasses on them and things like that, don't they?
It's not something for you desperate to finish. Whereas normally you go watch a Marvel film, it finishes, you get a minute or so of the top credits, then you get the mid. They always call it the mid-credit sequence. It's actually
with the big animation with the big main titles on it. And
the tenth of the way through the credits sequence. Yeah, you go see Captain Marvel. You've got the whole song playing with lots of graphics of her. Mid-credit sequence, and then you get a standard credit sequence that runs forever because so many thousands of people work on these films now, and it normally leads to a not very interesting end because typically now they're just little jokes at the end. And here they've seeded them all the way through, but even had there been less, I was just very comfortable with the flow of it, and every time they covered another sequence they came back to a different song as well. So yeah, it worked really well for me.
Yeah, definitely. I think we should all take note of this, Marvel.
Pay attention.
Yes.
I mean, the thing with Iron Man 2 is, I say it was a great credit sequence. It was that first bit that was great, and then it became a very traditional one. This worked better all the way through. So on that logic, I'm probably arguing it's their best end title sequence.
Yeah, because it makes you not sort of get tired.
Yeah, because normally you do sit there, particularly in the cinema, you just sit there going, oh, come on. And you accept it, but the thing is as well, because the mid-credit sequence is always the good one, you do wait a very long time for a little 15-second joke at the end.
Yeah, whereas this gives you a few others breaks, and then something interesting to look at while also giving you something listenable, not just movie scores.
Yeah. Absolutely. Final thoughts, folks. Becca, do you want to go first because you went last at the start?
Yeah, I can't really add much more, really. For me, this is probably, I might rank this a little bit higher than perhaps I would have done previously on the series. Not many problems with this one. I mean, it's probably on a par with the first one. In terms of the Marvel series, it has more comedic beats to it. As you pointed out earlier in the review, I think the only perhaps weak point is perhaps Nebula's is a little bit underused, which is a shame. Karen Gillan is fantastic. Visuals, all the cast are on top form. All the interactions are kind of really. I hate to use the word. I use it twice now. Organic is sort of very natural. None of it kind of feels really forced. There's a sort of humanity always to the dialogue, to the humour as well. It's one of the funniest films in terms of the Marvel series, which can be quite weighty at times because the stakes are so high. It kind of really helps to bring a bit of levity to it, and even though there are lives at stake. Great score, great performances. What's not to love?
Indeed, yeah. I mean, I just.
It's not perfect, but 4 out of 5.
Well, what is really? I mean, look, I think this is still probably it's going to be top 3 for me, easy.
Wow.
It's.
I don't think it's that high for me, but.
Well, yeah, but I think this is one of my. I think it's like a favourite of mine. So, should we say this is probably my license to kill? Should we say of the series?
Oh, really?
Though I would say, as the films in Marvel go, it's pretty.
Is your license to kill? Oh.
It's pretty. I say it's pretty tight. It's pretty complete as a film. So I don't know. We'll see where we are in the rankings. Because we've got the other Avengers film. We've got Endgame coming up. So we will see. But yeah, as it stands, I think this is probably the one Marvel film that does kind of strike a chord with me. It's the only one that makes me go. I won't say cry, but it does make me go. Oh.
Yeah, it does tug out the heartstrings a little bit, doesn't it?
It does, and it earns it as well. And that's the thing. It's not just me being a big softie, but it does actually.
You are a big softie.
Thanks.
No, he's not. Not really.
I said that ironically.
He's not though. He's not. I'm way softer than Chris. Yeah.
He's got a tough exterior.
But yeah, and all the characters work. I mean, I think it's when you analyse it, it's quite sharp. All the character work is really well done. I do appreciate the fact that it went a bit smaller, went a bit more character driven rather than like, well, let's just have lots of big set pieces and a big rambling adventure, which I think a lot of people maybe expected going in. But it still manages to be entertaining without the big action set pieces, and it crafts action in it quite well. It does tell a story about relationships and characters, and I strongly praise this entry.
For me, I think I'm not down sequels at all, and I don't believe sequels are always diminishing returns. But I think when sequels come in at or around the standard of the predecessor, the original ranks higher. It's as simple as that, because it did it first. If it does it to a similar standards, then it did it first. It's a bit like, had Moonraker been an identical standard to The Spy Who Loved Me, The Spy Who Loved Me would rank higher. Simple as that. It did it first, because they are very similar films. With this, Guardians, the first film was dropped a little for me. When I say it's dropped a little, I mean it probably would have been top 4 at one stage, and I can't see it being there, to be honest. I think the characters are kind of top 4, the inventiveness, the world, and all the rest of it. But the end result was like a decent film with a really shit last third. This is a much more consistent film, and I remember tweeting when I came out of it that it's probably a wash, the first one, but all its strengths are in different places. I still kind of agree with that. Having said that, my implication was that the first couple of acts of the first film were better. Well, actually, this has a very tight first act as well. So it's funny. It works really well. There's a density of jokes to it. That's the thing. That's why I think, Gunn probably went back and wrote several drafts of his script, because there's layer upon layer of jokes without it really overwhelming at any point. And it is very tight, so it's a film I admire greatly, and in its individual pieces, it's very good. I'm much, much more, and I've said this before, of a Kurt Russell fan than I was as a younger man. Didn't like him when I was a younger man, couldn't tell you why. Really, really like him as a sort of more middle-aged man now. I like him a lot. In terms of where I'm going to rank it, well, the rankings are yet to come, but I can see provisionally it gets into the top half just. So... And I sort of kind of think that's unfair in a way, but I think it's a sign that, like we said on the forthcoming Captain Marvel show, middling kind of means good these days with Marvel. They're long past these sort of phase 1 slight misfires and phase 2 so what films. They, everything is good. Yeah, all right, you can argue formulate, you can argue a lot of things, but everything down to about 2/3 of the way down is it good. I think the big knock on this film is I won't remember it in a couple of weeks. I'll remember a couple of little bits and a couple of little lines, but it doesn't stick like the first one. And when you start comparing them to stuff like The Winter Soldier, which is just magnificent, it's not in the same universe. And I don't have the same investment as I do in the sort of more regular universe, that the Earthbound, if you like. I'm much more interested in Spider-Man and Iron Man and Captain America and all the rest of it. I think over the course of 3 or 4 films, Peter Quill would start getting on my tits. But as a second stab at it, they actually made the first film better, even better. They managed to add things to stuff like Drax, where my gut feeling after the first film was, again, I keep saying it, the whole Stifler argument, less is more. You know, you think that's brilliant, let's add some more, and then you go, I can't stand it, stop. Well, it actually works to a bit more of Drax in this film, and you know, Mantis is quite a nice foil for him. So, as a selection of bits, it's great. All of those bits add up to something really cohesive and quite tight. But as a film, it's a bit less than the sum of its parts, and as such, it'll fall a couple of places below the other film. Spiritually, they're very similar. You know, they're very similar in quality. I could put them almost next to each other. But looking at my provisional rankings, a couple of films in between, it's top half Marvel. I like it a lot. But as I say, in a week or so, I won't have given this a thought.
So that's our review of Volume 2.
And it is a part of a great year as well, because obviously you've got two, you know, for what I've just said is damning with faint praise, but this is like top half Marvel efforts, and so are the next couple as well, in my view. So yeah, having said that, would I rank it higher if I wasn't as clueless?
Do you need more, knowledge on this film?
Well, when I think I won't think about it in a week's time, it's probably because I've got nothing to think about because I don't know anything.
Do you need facts?
Facts would help. That's exactly it, actually. Facts, Chris. You've hit.
Would it help if those facts were fun?
I think it helps with retention, because if I'm bored by the fact, I might think, well, that was interesting. But then I won't want to relive those golden moments with the brandy.
With a cigar and next to the fireplace.
Do we know anyone with a track record of providing this kind of information?
IMDb.com.
She never forgets the .com. The rest of the world calls it IMDb, but she never forgets the .com.
I call it.
Does anyone bother with co.uk, .com and things like that? Just Google it.
That's it. It's the only
just the name of the site.
He's never said IMDb without the .com ever.
Or what you'll see is especially in YouTube videos, they'll say links in the description. just click there.
Closer to home, I think, Becca, you are normally a purveyor of fun facts.
Yes. I have 5 fun facts. So, one, which I didn't even know about prior to
Even you?
Even I didn't know.
Even Becca didn't know.
Shock horror. No. No, I think it's always... I don't know a lot, but some stuff I do know.
I don't know much.
There are no...
But I know fun facts.
I was about to join in that, and then I realised I ain't got a hope in hell of hitting the notes in that song.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know.
I don't know much.
I think doing that high falsetto voice is probably the best way. Anyway, so I'll come out of my Johari window, and yeah, fun fact number 1: colour of Ego's 1978 Ford Mustang Cobra, kind of like metallic teal and orange colour, is the same as Claus Milano's ship, as we've seen in the first film. Fun fact number 2: in the comics, Mantis is half German, half Vietnamese. Clementine, whose name I can never pronounce, apologies, is of Korean, French, and Russian heritage. And also in the French dub of the film, she provides her own voice. She does her own French dubbing, which I think is very cool. Fun fact number 3: Vin Diesel says "I am Groot" 17 or 18 times in the film, whereas in the previous film he the line for about 6 languages for the various worldwide releases. This time he did it various 16 foreign language releases. So
okay.
Also looking at the technical aspects of the film, the makeup, obviously the film's gone on, makeup time has kind of squished down from several hours to like 90 minutes to an hour, but whereas other aspects have increased as well, so I think that's quite interesting. Fun fact number 4: other actors considered for the role include Liam Neeson, Viggo Mortensen, Arnie, Eric Berdwin, and Ron Perlman. It would have been interesting choices, especially Arnie. So we've had
well, especially Liam Neeson. I mean, if he's going to do that to a black man, what's he going to do to all the colours in this film?
I kind of thought, oh, bit dodgy now, but no, considering his tough guy demeanour.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, he could easily sort of
I think now he probably wouldn't be cast at all. Yeah, my fun fact 5 that I didn't even know. Ego, the Living Planet, is the biggest visual effect of all time, apparently, so far, with over 1 trillion polygons. And the look of the planet was inspired by the work of fractal artist Hal Tenney, who also worked on the film.
I think that's something that I always remember them saying during Star Trek 2009 on the special features, because they had to put the Kelvin and the Narada in the same shot. And they said you animate them not real size, because that's miles, but relative to each other, you do. You have to have that scale, otherwise it doesn't look right.
No.
So the Narada had that much more size and scale than that little Kelvin craft, and we know how detailed the Kelvin was. So yeah, they do. If something is that big, they have no choice but to animate it big.
That was an impressive effect.
Yeah, it was, and the effects work in this film is pretty good. Yeah, definitely. You can see a little bit of an increased budget from last time out.
You can, yeah. The visuals are stunning, definitely. Although I still maintain that the most visually impressive film is Doctor Strange.
I'm not going to argue with you, because it's just your honest reaction to something, and it's not like the effects were bad.
I think it's mostly the colours in this as well. I mean, that's always going to.
I didn't really notice. I didn't really notice the visuals in Doctor Strange at all.
It's like watching like a kaleidoscope almost effect. But obviously, as I said, had we not had like Inception or The Matrix or those kind of films that really kind of push the boundaries of movie making, we wouldn't really have, or even they all came from the original art, from the original comics. So we wouldn't really have that kind of the visual language, I guess. So. And we all the poorer for it.
So, I have a fun fact.
Russell has a
any fruity corners.
He has a thing, yes. Well, yeah, Kurt Russell was like the first choice from Chris Pratt's suggestion. But there was also Matthew McConaughey turned down the role of the quote-unquote villain, which probably would have been Ego. I think they were referring to in that one, but so I think it could have been all right, as which I think could have worked. I mean, obviously, I think Kurt Russell's better.
Or they could have had David Hasselhoff, and at one point in the film, he briefly morphed into like Kurt Russell.
That would have been amazing.
Yeah, but that would just make everyone think, why couldn't you just get Kurt Russell to do it?
No, that would have been pretty cool, because didn't they have like the Baywatch reboot come out as well? So he was in that, so he's kind of had Hasselhoff has had the the Baywatch reboot.
That was a bit odd, because you had The Rock basically play Mitch, and then and you had like one character play like the Pam Anderson character, and then you had both Pam Anderson and David Hasselhoff come back as kind of like themselves, and you're thinking, hang on, so.
Hold on a minute, what's going on here?
Yeah, it was like, okay, so what? What? I mean, like, are you just,
who are these guys?
Are you just kind of like both spiritually and coincidentally have the same names? I don't understand. Like,
Oh, Hollywood.
That film was shit.
What, the Baywatch remake?
But then the TV show was shit as well.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it did try to be like
cult following.
It did try to be like another 22 Jump Street, didn't it? But
it didn't get any near that though.
But the Rock's in it, so it made it watchable.
That's what I thought it was going to be, though. That's what I was expecting, because the Rock's good at comedy as well.
Yeah.
And so is Zac Efron, for that matter.
So it's got half naked Rock, half naked Zac Efron. That's all good.
We didn't even mention the sort of scantily clad women in it, did we, Chris?
No, not at all. I was just thinking
I've actually not seen it.
We mentioned the comedic abilities of the two leading men.
I've actually not seen it, so I can't comment.
I wouldn't bother, Becca. It's utterly forgettable.
Yeah, I'm not going to bother.
It's not embarrassingly poor. It's just totally nothing. I've seen far worse, but it's not a 21 Jump Street. It isn't.
No.
There you go. But then it's based on a property that was just awful anyway.
Yeah. I mean, look, to be fair, if you were ever going to sort of do Baywatch the movie, I think that was like the way to do it.
That's
like
the style.
Yeah, just do it as like a kind of like a parody, and then but obviously it just didn't work.
Since the advert of Pornhub, it's a bit obsolete now, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, now we all have like sort of pause and play and things like that.
You don't need it. The joke, that was a joke, but anything, even plot wise, it was kind of subpar, the TV show. But it was at one point, because for obvious reasons it transcends language. It was the biggest TV show in the world for a while. Like 1 billion people used to watch.
It was hugely popular, wasn't it? So
yeah, there you go. And that was pre Pamela Anderson as well. Even in its early years, it was. But there you go. I feel vaguely depressed we finished the evening talking about David Hasselhoff. I really have. Particularly as next week starts with such an emotional high for me. Because I've got to admit, and I will admit it, I bare my soul on this show. I cry over the logo next time. Well, we'll go into that next week, which means, Becca.
do you expect us to talk? We'll return with Spider-Man: Homecoming.